This past week, the US president has said two distinct things with respect to Iran. First is that Washington is in no rush for talks and that there are no scheduled negotiations. Second, and the more recent statement, is America's economic warfare against Iran.
Well, the war between both the countries that began with the US and Israeli joint strikes on Iran in February this year has been at a stalemate for months now. Neither side has budged in its demands or claims about who exercises how much control on the narrative and the strategic dominance as well. In fact, in his latest post on Truth Social, Donald Trump announced what he described as the most crushing economic operation against any country. The American president called it economic warfare and isolation on an unprecedented level.
Trump also vowed what he labeled as tremendous punishment on any country that helps or does business with the Islamic Republic. The US president has not yet specified what punishment countries would face, and none other than Iran were mentioned by name. But Iran, in its typical fashion, has dismissed Trump's long rant as a tactical or a tactic to divert attention from matters closer home. Iran's foreign minister says, and I quote, the so-called economic D-Day is a diversion from America's own crisis, unprecedented debt and surging interest costs. Doubling down on failed policies will only bring further defeat and enmity of Iranians. U.S. economic terrorism threatens global economy and sovereignty worldwide.
While Iran has been scrambling economically for years now due to sanctions, remember this latest statement by Arakchi has struck a chord because Donald Trump is facing domestic issues to the extent that it has hurt the American president's popularity. And amid all of this, the U.S. national debt has crossed a staggering milestone, $40 trillion for the first time. The debt has more than doubled in less than a decade. The Treasury says that the total U.S. government debt stood at $40.047 trillion on Tuesday. And of that, about $32.3 trillion in debt is held by the public, while $7.8 trillion is held by government accounts. Now, the total has more than doubled from $19.95 trillion in January of 2017, and the latest trillion-dollar jump came in less than 5 months, from $39 trillion to more than $40 trillion.
Of those 10 years, Trump has been president for almost 6 years, a full term of 4 years from 2016 to 2020, and close to 2 years of his ongoing second term. This even after the U.S. president shouldered his entire election campaign on an American-first approach, and the volume of debt does not end here. The Congressional Budget Office estimates Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill Act could add another $4.7 trillion to the debt. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is also trying to ease pressure in longer-term bonds, doubling certain Treasury buyback operations to at least $4 billion per operation. But the underlying challenge remains. Washington is spending considerably more than it collects in revenue, while Trump has dismissed the figures and the alarm around it. The question still remains, is the threat of hurting Iran economically a way for Donald Trump to turn away from his own problems at home? Let's talk to our guest now. He's joining us from Washington, D.C. His name is Mr. Dov Zakhaim. He's a former Undersecretary of Defense in George W. Bush administration and former Chief Financial Officer of the Department of Defense. Thank you very much, Mr. Zakhaim, for joining us at this hour, and welcome to the broadcast. Quick question. Do you think this economic warfare on Iran will work?
Well, it very much depends. By the way, right now I'm at my summer place in New Hampshire, which is a lot cooler than Washington, D.C. You can see but the mountains behind me. You know, it's very hard to know. The strategy is simply this: wait the Iranians out. The problem is that's exactly the Iranian strategy vis-a-vis the United States. Wait the Americans out. Our strategy is that eventually the economic strangulation will bring the government down, or at least get them to yield on nuclear weapons and other issues. Their strategy is the policy of simply causing inflation to continue to rise. It's not so much the debt that worries the average American. It's the inflation, the cost of petrol, the cost of food. those sorts of things. Their idea is that eventually this war will be so unpopular that the president will have to back down. So we're using economics, they're using politics. The strategy is exactly the same. Wait the other side out. And quite frankly, it's not clear who's going to win. And the reason I say that, if I may, as you pointed out, the Iranian economy has been in trouble for quite some time. Moreover, they do have friends in North Korea, China, and Russia. Even though the Russians themselves are hurting, they're still helping the Iranians. And so the Iranian regime could continue because it's not clear they care very much about their people anyway. On our side, the president clearly follows his own instincts, and he doesn't terribly worry much about facts that contradict whatever he thinks he wants to do. So you have, in a sense, both governments in a kind of bubble, and it's just not clear where the bubble will burst first.
Mr. Zakhaim, as we talk about the Iranian economy, there have been, of course, concerns, and the IMF has stated as well that it's not as if the Iranian economy is doing very well, despite the fact that they've been able to stand tall against the U.S. military, as well as economically against American sanctions. But as far as Donald Trump's plan to isolate Iran economically is concerned, would that be successful, considering the fact that there are different countries that are still coming to aid for Iran, and it's not as if it is completely isolated in the world?
Well, that's absolutely right, including your own country that still maintains some sort of relations with Iran. The problem, though, is that it's not clear that those countries that are helping Iran are helping it to the extent that it can withstand constant economic pressure for the next couple of years while Mr. Trump is still president of the United States. Mr. Trump is betting that Iran won't be able to withstand that. They're clearly hurting. They were hurting before all this started because there were sanctions on them to begin with. They're hurting even more. And then the question becomes, will Trump impose what are called third country sanctions on countries that deal with Iran? And that gets very, very complicated. For instance, what will he do with China? We don't know. But you never know with Mr. Trump. I mean, that's the point. And one other thing about him is we know he doesn't want to send troops on the ground to attack Iran that way, which is very clever because, quite frankly, it would take hundreds of thousands of troops to do anything in Iran, and that's just not going to happen. So the economic approach is probably the right approach, given his limitations elsewhere. Whether Iran folds in 2 years' time is very much an open question. And I would point out, for those of you who know your history, how long did the siege of Leningrad hold out against the Nazis in World War II? It was a long, long time. People were starving, but they held out.
All right, so we'll have to wait and see how this really moves forward and pans out for both governments and countries. We'll leave it there. Mr. Zakhaim, thanks very much and enjoy your stay in the mountains while we sit here and discuss wars from the studio. Thank you very much for joining us at the moment.
Thank you for having me.